Commander Frank Miller stared at the holographic message floating above his desk. He read it for the 5th time, still not quite believing what it said. After decades of scanning the stars for signs of intelligent life, humanity had not only found it, but had now received a formal invitation to join the Galactic Council. "This changes everything," he said to the empty room. His office aboard the orbital station Unity was small but offered a stunning view of Earth below. The blue planet seemed so peaceful from up here, unaware that its place in the universe was about to shift dramatically. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Admiral Joan Rivers walked in, her gray uniform crisp and her eyes sharp. "I assume you've read the invitation," she said, taking the seat across from him. Frank nodded. "Yes, Mom. I've also read the intelligence reports about the Vraxians." The Admiral's expression darkened. "Then you understand why this is both an opportunity and a danger." The Vraxians, even their names sounded predatory. First contact with alien life had occurred just 3 years ago, when Earth's deep space probes detected signals from the Galactic Council. Since then, humanity had learned that dozens of species existed across the stars, organized under a complex political structure. And at the top of that structure sat the Vraxians. They evolved from apex predators, Frank said, pulling up images on his screen. The Vraxians stood nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in natural armor plates. Sharp claws extended from 6-fingered hands, and their jaws could reportedly crush bone. They've dominated the Council for over 400 years, and now they've invited us to join," Admiral Rivers said. "The United Federation has decided to accept the invitation. We can't afford to isolate ourselves." Frank frowned. The reports suggest they organize species by evolutionary development. Predators at the top, prey species at the bottom. The Admiral nodded. "Which is why we need our best diplomat leading this mission." "Congratulations, Commander. You've just been appointed Earth's representative to the Galactic Council." Frank felt his mouth go dry. "Admiral, with all due respect, this isn't a request, Commander. Your background in both military strategy and diplomatic relations makes you uniquely qualified." She stood up. "The USS Horizon has been prepared for your journey. You'll depart in 3 days." After the Admiral left, Frank opened his personal files. He pulled up images of his family, his brother Steve, and sister-in-law Maria, back in Colorado. He wondered if he would ever see the Rocky Mountains again. The next 3 days passed in a blur of briefings and preparations. Frank learned what little was known about the Council's protocols and the limited information about the 27 known alien species. The Vraxians, led by High Commanders Extra, had established a hierarchy that mirrored the food chain. Species with predatory ancestry received privileges and power. The rest existed as second-class citizens. On the morning of his departure, Frank stood in the launch bay looking at the USS Horizon. The ship was humanity's finest, a blend of elegance and power designed to showcase the best of human engineering. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" said a voice beside him. Frank turned to see Lieutenant Olivia Blackwell, Earth's leading xenobiologist. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her eyes reflected the ship's lights. "You're part of the mission?" Frank asked. She nodded. "Someone needs to study these aliens up close. I've been analyzing the limited biological data we have on the Vraxians. They're impressive, but they have weaknesses. Everything does." As they boarded the ship along with the rest of the diplomatic team, Frank couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Humanity was about to meet the galaxy's self-proclaimed apex predators. The Vraxians had dominated all other species through intimidation and force. Frank wondered how they would react to humans, a species that didn't fit neatly into their hierarchy of predator and prey. He would soon find out. The journey to Vrax Prime took 3 weeks. During this time, Lieutenant Olivia Blackwell spent hours studying the limited data on Vraxian biology. The ship's observation deck became her favorite place to work, surrounded by the endless stars. Frank found her there late one night, surrounded by floating holographic displays of Vraxian anatomy. Find anything useful?" he asked, sitting down beside her. Olivia zoomed in on a three-dimensional image of Avraxian's internal systems. They evolved on a planet with high gravity and scarce resources. Their bodies are built for short, powerful bursts of activity, perfect for ambush predators. But there's something interesting here. She pointed to their respiratory system. Their lung capacity suggests poor endurance. They're sprinters, not marathon runners. Frank considered this. Useful to know, but we're diplomats, not fighters. Olivia gave him a serious look. In a galaxy organized by predator and prey, understanding biology is diplomacy. The USS Horizon finally reached Vrax Prime. The planet was enormous, with swirling orange and red clouds covering its surface. A massive space station orbited the planet, the headquarters of the Galactic Council. As their ship docked, Frank gathered the human delegation in the briefing room. Besides himself and Olivia, there was Security Chief Alan Carter, Engineer Sophia Martinez, Communications Officer Kyle Jenkins, and Diplomatic Officer Lisa Patel. "Remember," Frank said, "we represent all of humanity. We're here to establish peaceful relations, but we will not be intimidated. We stand tall." When the airlock doors opened, they faced their first Vraxian. The alien towered over them, nearly 8 feet tall with mottled gray-green skin covered in natural armor plates. Its amber eyes studied them coldly. "I am Crafter, Security Liaison," the Vraxian said, its voice deep and rumbling. "You will follow me to the council chambers." They walked through corridors filled with various alien species. Frank noted how the smaller aliens pressed themselves against walls when Vraxians passed. Fear was everywhere. The council chamber was enormous, with curved walls rising hundreds of feet. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in tiered sections. The Vraxians occupied the highest tier, looking down on everyone else. High Commander Zextra sat on an elevated platform. He was larger than other Vraxians, with battle scars across his face and a cloak made from the hide of some unknown creature. "The human delegation," announced Crafter. All eyes turned to them. Frank felt a wave of tension fill the room as Dextra leaned forward, studying them with predatory interest. "So these are the humans," Zextra said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Smaller than I expected. No claws, no fangs, no natural armor." He stood up, towering over everyone. "Tell me, human, how did such a soft species survive long enough to develop space travel?" Frank stepped forward. "Through cooperation, innovation, and determination, High Commander. Humans may lack claws, but we have other strengths." Laughter rippled through the Vraxian section. Zextra's mouth stretched into what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Strength is strength," he said. "The galaxy respects only one law, the law of predator and prey. Where do you think humans fit in that order?" Before Frank could answer, Zextra continued. "Your species will be assigned observer status for now. You may attend council sessions, but may not vote until your position in the galactic hierarchy is clarified." As they were escorted to their quarters, Kyle whispered, "They're treating us like we're nothing." "Let them," Olivia replied quietly. "They're making a mistake. I studied their biology more carefully. They have weaknesses they don't even realize." In their private meeting room later, Frank paced back and forth. "We need to earn their respect, but on our terms." Elan nodded. "I've noticed something. They value physical power, but they've never seen humans in action. They have no idea what we're capable of." Frank looked out the window at the swirling clouds of Vrax Prime. "Then perhaps it's time we showed them." Across the station, in his private chambers, High Commander Zextra reviewed footage of the humans. Something about them bothered him, though he couldn't identify what. They lacked all the physical traits that defined power in the galaxy, yet they showed no fear. It was unnatural. And Zextra did not like puzzles he couldn't solve. For 2 weeks, the human delegation attended council sessions. They watched as Vraxians dominated every discussion. Smaller species rarely spoke, and when they did, their concerns were often dismissed with growls or threatening gestures. Frank filed daily reports back to Earth, carefully documenting the power structure. The Alani, a small blue-skinned species with large eyes, seemed to suffer the most. They were natural herbivores from a peaceful world and were treated as little more than servants. "This isn't right," Kyle said one evening as they watched an Alani representative being forced to give up his seat for a late-arriving Vraxian. "They've created a system based on intimidation, not justice." Frank nodded. "We need to be patient. We're still learning the rules of this place." The next day, during a trade negotiation, an Alani named Sorrel presented data showing how Vraxian shipping restrictions were causing food shortages on 3 worlds. As he spoke, his voice trembled slightly. "These numbers are wrong," interrupted Crafter, the Vraxian security liaison. "Your species is too simple to understand proper economics." "The numbers are accurate," Sorrel insisted, his large eyes blinking rapidly. "Children are going hungry because—" Kravtor moved with shocking speed. He grabbed Sorrel by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "You call me wrong again, pray." The council chamber went silent. No one moved to help the struggling Alani. No one except Alan Carter. The human security chief stepped forward. "Put him down," he said calmly. Kravtor turned, still holding the gasping Alani. "This is not your concern, human." "I'm making it my concern," Alan replied. He wasn't tall by human standards, but his body was solid muscle from years of training. "That's not how civilized beings behave." Laughter erupted from the Vraxian section. Crafter dropped Sorrel, who fell to the floor, gasping for air. The Vraxian turned his full attention to Alan. "You speak of civilization. Your species is barely out of its caves." Crafter snarled. "You have no place here." Frank started to move forward to defuse the situation, but Olivia caught his arm. "Wait," she whispered. "This might be what we need." Kravtor loomed over Alan. "Perhaps you need a lesson in galactic reality, human. I challenge you to Vraxkral." A wave of shocked whispers spread through the chamber. Even the other Vraxians looked surprised. "Vraxkral? What's that?" Alan asked, his voice steady. High Commander Zextra leaned forward on his throne. "Vraxkral is a combat challenge, a test of predator against predator, or in your case, predator against prey." His eyes gleamed. "It is a tradition older than the Council itself." Frank stepped up beside Alan. "We're diplomats, not gladiators. We decline." "You cannot," said Zextra. "By our laws, once issued, a challenge must be answered. Refusal brands your entire species as cowards, unworthy of even observer status." Alan looked at Frank. "It's okay, Commander. I can handle this." Frank pulled Alan aside. "This isn't what we came here for." "No," Alan agreed quietly. "But it's what they understand. Look around." He nodded toward the other species watching them. "They're all waiting to see if humans will stand up or back down. This matters." Lisa Patel, their diplomatic officer, joined them. "He's right, sir. I've been studying their legal codes. This challenge is recognized in the founding documents of the Council. We have no diplomatic grounds to refuse." Frank looked back at the Vraxians, all watching with predatory anticipation. Then he looked at the Alani and other species, their expressions showing a mixture of pity and something else, maybe the smallest hint of hope. "Very well," Frank said finally. He turned to Crafter. "He accepts your challenge." Crafter's mouth opened in what passed for a Vraxian smile. "Excellent. 3 days from now, in the combat arena. Prepare yourself, human." He leaned closer. "Although there is little point, no non-Vraxian has ever survived Vraxkral." As they left the chamber, Frank wondered if he had just made a terrible mistake. But when he looked at the determined expression on Alan's face, he felt something unexpected, a glimmer of hope. Back in their quarters, the human delegation gathered for an emergency meeting. Frank paced the room while Olivia pulled up all available data on Vraxian physiology on the main screen. Let's be clear, Frank said. We have 3 days to prepare Alan for a fight that no non-Vraxian has ever survived. Alan sat calmly, studying the images of Vraxian anatomy. Before I joined the diplomatic corps, I was special forces. I've fought in every environment on Earth. I'm not going in unprepared. Olivia pointed to the screen. The Vraxians have several key weaknesses we can exploit. Their cardiovascular system is designed for short bursts of activity. Their muscles are incredibly strong but burn oxygen at a high rate. So they're sprinters, not marathon runners, Sofia Martinez said. The engineer had been quiet until now. Exactly, Olivia replied. And there's more. Their thermal regulation is poor. They overheat easily. Their home world has a moderate climate. They never evolved to handle temperature extremes. Kyle had been working his own angle. I've been talking to some of the other species. The Ilani are grateful for Alan standing up for them. They've shared information about Vraxian fighting techniques. What did they tell you? Alan asked. Vraxians rely on overwhelming force and intimidation. They expect their opponents to be afraid, to make mistakes, Kyle explained. No one has ever tried to outlast them in a fight. Everyone tries to match their strength, which is impossible. Alan nodded thoughtfully. So I need to fight smart, not strong. There's another factor, Lisa added. This isn't just physical, it's psychological. The Vraxians believe absolutely in their superiority. Their entire social structure depends on it. Frank looked at Alan. Can you win this? Alan stood up. With the right strategy, yes. For the next 3 days, Alan trained constantly. The humans converted part of their quarters into a makeshift gym. Olivia monitored his vital signs while he pushed his body to its limits. Sophia created weights that mimicked the Vraxian gravity Alan would experience in the arena. Kyle continued gathering intelligence. He returned one evening with surprising news. The betting pools are going crazy, he said. Most species are betting on how quickly Alan will die, but a few are actually placing small bets on him lasting more than 5 minutes. That's something, I guess, Frank said dryly. On the day of the challenge, Alan performed his final preparations. He stretched carefully and drank a special electrolyte solution Olivia had prepared. Remember, she told him, Vraxians aren't used to extended exertion. Make Kravtor work for every move. The longer the fight goes, the better your chances. Frank put a hand on Alan's shoulder. You don't have to win. Just showing courage will earn respect. Alan smiled. With all due respect, sir, I didn't come here to lose. The combat arena was massive, with seating for thousands. Every seat was filled, mostly with Vraxians, but representatives from all council species were present. The human delegation sat in a small section near the front. The arena floor was a circle of reddish sand, 50 feet across. 4 large doors led into it from different directions. High Commander Zextra sat on an elevated platform overlooking the arena. When he raised his clawed hand, the crowd fell silent. Today we witness Vraxkrull, the challenge of dominance, his voice boomed. Crafter of the Vraxian Elite Guard has challenged Alan Carter of Earth. By our ancient laws, they will fight until submission or death. One of the doors opened, and Crafter strode in. He wore minimal armor that covered his chest and shoulders, leaving his powerful limbs free. In one hand, he carried a short, curved blade. The Vraxians roared their approval. Another door opened, and Alan walked out wearing only a simple black fitted shirt and pants. He carried no weapons. The arena went silent, then erupted in laughter. Frank felt his heart sink, but beside him, Olivia was smiling. What? He asked. Look at Crafter's eyes, she said. He's confused. Alan isn't acting like prey. As the 2 fighters approached the center of the arena, Zextra raised his hand again. Begin. Crafter lunged at Alan with startling speed. His claws slashed through the air where Alan's head had been a split second earlier. The human had sidestepped just in time, moving with practiced precision. The Vraxian crowd roared. They expected a quick kill, a show of dominance that would reinforce their place at the top of the galactic food chain. Kravtor attacked again, this time swinging his blade in a wide arc. Alan ducked under it and backed away, maintaining distance. Kravtor followed, his powerful legs carrying him forward in great bounds. "Stand and fight. Pray," he snarled. Alan remained silent, focused. He moved constantly, making Kravtor chase him around the arena. The Vraxian's attacks were powerful, but increasingly predictable. Each time Kravtor missed, his frustration grew. In the stands, Frank watched nervously. "He can't keep dodging forever." "He doesn't need to," Olivia replied, her eyes never leaving the fight. "Look at Kravtor's breathing pattern. It's already changing." 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Kravtor landed a glancing blow, his claws raking across Alan's arm. Blood appeared on the human's black shirt. The Vraxian audience cheered. But Alan didn't panic. He used the moment to circle away, forcing Kravtor to turn and pursue him again. The Vraxian was moving noticeably slower now. "What is this cowardice?" Kravtor shouted, his chest heaving. "Fight me." Alan spoke for the first time since entering the arena. "I am fighting. You just don't recognize the strategy." This enraged Kravtor. He charged forward with a roar, both arms extended to grab Alan. But his movements were becoming sloppy. Alan sidestepped again and landed his first strike, a solid kick to Kravtor's knee. The Vraxian stumbled but quickly regained his footing. He looked more surprised than hurt. "You dare strike me?" he growled. 15 minutes into the fight, the mood in the arena began to shift. The Vraxians had fallen unusually quiet. No non-Vraxian had ever lasted this long in Vraxcrow. Kravtor was visibly tiring now. Sweat poured from his body, and his breathing was labored. His attacks came less frequently. Alan, while bleeding from several minor wounds, maintained a steady pace. "Impossible," High Commander Zextra muttered from his viewing platform. "What manner of creature is this human?" 20 minutes in, Alan began his counterattack. Instead of just dodging, he started landing quick strikes after each of Kravtor's increasingly slow attacks. Nothing powerful enough to seriously hurt the Vraxian, but enough to wear him down further. Kravtor's frustration turned to confusion, then to the first hints of fear. He had never experienced a fight lasting this long. His muscles burned with fatigue, while the human seemed barely winded. "How?" Kravtor gasped after a failed lunge left him on one knee. Alan circled him calmly. "On Earth, we evolved as persistence hunters. We chased prey until they collapsed from exhaustion. We're not the strongest species on our world, but we can outlast almost anything." The arena was completely silent now. Every species watched in amazement as the paradigm they had lived under for centuries was being challenged before their eyes. 30 minutes into the fight, Kravtor could barely lift his arms. His movements were sluggish, his mighty body betraying him. When he lunged once more, Alan didn't dodge. Instead, he stepped to the side and used Kravtor's momentum to flip him onto his back. Before the Vraxian could rise, Alan was on him, applying a wrestling hold that pinned Kravtor's arms and put pressure on his throat. "Yield," Alan said quietly. "There's no shame in recognizing when you're beaten." Kravtor struggled weakly, his strength gone. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, a Vraxian was helpless before another species. In the stands, the Elani and other prey species watched with wide eyes. The Vraxians sat in stunned silence. High Commander Zextra leaned forward on his throne, his expression unreadable as he witnessed something no Vraxian had ever seen. One of their elite warriors at the mercy of a species they had dismissed as weak. For several tense moments, Kravtor continued to struggle weakly in Alan's grip. The arena remained silent, thousands of eyes fixed on the unprecedented scene. No one, especially not a Vraxian, knew how to react to what they were witnessing. "Yield," Alan repeated, maintaining the hold. He didn't apply more pressure though he could have. This wasn't about humiliation. It was about respect. Finally, Crafter's body went limp. "I yield," he said, the words barely audible. Alan immediately released him and stood up. He stepped back, giving the Vraxian space to rise on his own. Crafter got to his feet slowly, his legs shaking from exhaustion. High Commander Zextra stood, his face a mask of controlled fury and confusion. "The human wins," he announced, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "The challenge is satisfied." As Alan turned to leave the arena, Crafter called out to him, "Human." Alan looked back. "How?" Crafter asked, genuinely bewildered. "How did you defeat me? I am stronger. My claws and armor are superior." Alan faced him fully. Strength isn't just about muscles or claws. It's about using what you have effectively. Humans learned long ago that intelligence and endurance can overcome raw power. In the stands, Frank and the human delegation were receiving shocked looks from nearby aliens. The prey species, the Elani, the Nuvari, and others, were staring at them with newfound interest. As Alan rejoined them, Frank clasped his shoulder. "Well done." Olivia was already scanning Alan's injuries. "Nothing serious," she reported. "Just surface wounds." "What happens now?" Alan asked, wincing slightly as Olivia applied a healing gel to his arm. "Now," Frank said, "we changed the conversation." The next day, the human delegation entered the council chamber to find a very different atmosphere. The Vraxians were subdued, watching the humans with cautious eyes. The other species looked at them with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. High Commander Zextra called the session to order. "The human delegation has requested time to address the council. As is their right after successfully completing Braxkrell, we will hear them." Frank nodded to Lisa Patul, who stepped forward. They had planned this carefully. "Honored council members," Lisa began, her voice clear and confident. "Yesterday, you witnessed something that challenges your understanding of strength and evolutionary superiority." She activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed ancient human cave paintings of hunters with spears chasing large animals. "Humans did not evolve as apex predators in the traditional sense," she explained. "We lacked the claws, fangs, and raw strength of Earth's most fearsome predators. Instead, we developed different advantages." The display shifted to show humans from thousands of years ago, tracking animals across open plains. "We became persistence hunters. We chased prey that was faster than us, but couldn't run as long. Our bodies evolved to cool efficiently through sweating. Our legs and lungs adapted for endurance. And most importantly, our brains grew to understand patterns, to plan, to create tools." The images changed to show humans in different environments: deserts, jungles, mountains, polar regions. While other species on our world were limited to specific habitats, we adapted to live everywhere. When we weren't strong enough, we became smarter. When we faced challenges, we worked together. Many council members leaned forward, captivated by the presentation. Even some Vraxians appeared interested. "What you witnessed yesterday wasn't an anomaly," Lisa continued. "It was evolution in action, not the evolution of brute force, but of adaptability, endurance, and intelligence." She looked directly at Zextra. "The galaxy has operated under the assumption that evolutionary success is measured by who has the sharpest claws or the strongest bite. But humans represent a different kind of predator, one that relies on stamina, cooperation, and problem-solving." The chamber was completely silent. Lisa's words were challenging thousands of years of Vraxian ideology. "We don't come to the Galactic Council seeking to dominate," she concluded. "We come seeking partnership. But make no mistake, humans will not be prey. We survived on a world of apex predators, not by becoming the strongest, but by becoming the most adaptable." As Lisa finished, Frank watched Zextra carefully. The High Commander's expression had changed from anger to something more complex, perhaps the first hints of respect. In the weeks following Lisa's presentation, the atmosphere in the Galactic Council began to shift. The human delegation found themselves approached by representatives from many species seeking private conversations. At first, these meetings were cautious, but soon they became more open. "The Nuveri have invited us to a cultural exchange," Kyle reported during their morning briefing. "And the Alani want to discuss possible trade agreements." Frank nodded. "Good. What about the Vraxians?" "Officially, they're maintaining distance," Kyle said. "Unofficially, several mid-level officials have expressed interest in learning more about human military tactics." Frank looked at Alan, who had fully recovered from his injuries. "What do you think?" "I think they're reassessing us," Alan replied. "Crafter hasn't shown his face in public since the challenge. Word is that he's in seclusion, training. He was humiliated, but he's also curious. He wants to understand how he was defeated." Olivia had spent the past weeks studying other species more carefully. The predator-prey hierarchy isn't just social, it's deeply embedded in their governance systems. Laws, resource allocation, territory rights, all favor predator species. The Vraxians didn't create this system, but they've perfected it. "Can it be changed?" Frank asked. "Any system can be changed," Lisa said, "but it will take time." One evening, as Frank was reviewing reports in their quarters, the door chimed. When it slid open, he was surprised to see High Commander Zextra standing there alone. "Commander Miller," Zextra said, his voice lower than usual. "May I enter?" Frank nodded, gesturing to a chair. It was too small for the Vraxian, who chose to stand instead. "Your presentation about human evolution was enlightening," Zextra said after a moment of silence. "I have studied it further." "And what have you concluded?" Frank asked. "That perhaps our understanding of evolutionary success has been too narrow." The admission seemed difficult for Zextra. The Vraxian rise to power came through strength and dominance. It is the only path we know. "There are other paths," Frank said. "Cooperation can achieve what competition cannot." Zextra made a rumbling sound deep in his throat. "The Council has existed for thousands of years. Change comes slowly." "Sometimes," Frank agreed. "And sometimes it arrives suddenly, like a species no one expected to defeat a Vraxian in combat." For the first time, Zextra's mouth curved in what might have been a genuine smile, not a predatory display. "Indeed." He moved toward the door, then paused. "The Council will vote tomorrow on upgrading Earth's status from observer to full member. I wanted you to know that the Vraxian delegation will support this." After Zextra left, Frank called the team together to share the news. "Full membership," Sophia said. "That's unprecedented for a new species." "They're adapting," Olivia observed, "just like we did. Maybe that's the true sign of an apex species, not domination, but adaptation." The next day, the council chamber was packed. Every delegation was present for the vote. When Earth's membership was approved unanimously, a wave of surprise moved through the room. As the session ended, Frank found himself surrounded by representatives from many worlds. Some congratulated him, while others seemed eager to establish new connections with Earth. An elderly Ilani approached, his large eyes shining with emotion. "Thank you," he said simply. "For centuries, we believed our only choice was submission. You have shown there is another way." Frank looked across the chamber to where Zextra was watching. Their eyes met, and the Vraxian gave a slight nod. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was recognition, one apex species acknowledging another. That evening, as Frank sent his report to Earth, he wrote, "We came to the stars expecting to find either empty silence or hostile dominance. Instead, we found a galaxy waiting for change. Humanity's place isn't to conquer or submit, but to demonstrate that strength takes many forms. And perhaps the greatest strength is knowing when to use power and when to extend a hand in partnership." He paused, then added, "The galaxy's apex predators are learning that laughter can turn to respect. And that might be the most important lesson of all." 6 months passed. The human delegation expanded as more specialists arrived from Earth. Their quarters in the council station grew into an embassy that buzzed with activity day and night. Frank stood by the large viewing window, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. Earth vessels now regularly docked alongside alien craft, exchanging goods and knowledge. "Commander, you have a visitor," said the embassy eye. Frank turned to find Kravtor at the door. The Vraxian looked different, less arrogant, more thoughtful. "Commander Miller," Kravtor said with a slight bow of his head. "I hope I am not intruding." "Not at all," Frank replied. "What can I do for you?" Kravtor stepped forward. "I have been assigned as liaison to the new Interspecies Cooperative Initiative. Your Lisa Patel suggested I speak with you first." The initiative had been Frank's idea, a program where species would share their unique evolutionary advantages rather than using them for dominance. It had faced resistance at first, but was slowly gaining support. "What do you think of the initiative?" Frank asked. Kravtor was silent for a moment. 6 months ago, I would have called it weakness. Now, he seemed to struggle with the words. Now I see it differently. The Vraxians have ruled through strength for so long that we forgot there are other forms of power. They walked together to the training facility where Alan was teaching a class. Vraxian, Elani, and other species trained side by side, each contributing techniques from their worlds. "We never would have allowed this before," Kravtor observed. "Different species training together as equals." In another room, Olivia worked with scientists from 12 worlds, studying comparative biology. They were developing new medical treatments based on the combined knowledge of all council species. "Your human persistence has changed more than just politics," Kravtor said. "It has changed how we see ourselves." Later that day, Frank attended a council session. The chamber looked different now. The seating had been rearranged so no species sat above others. Zextra still led the proceedings, but his tone had shifted from commanding to collaborative. When Frank reported Earth's progress in setting up exchange programs, representatives from many worlds offered support. Even more surprisingly, several Vraxians spoke in favor of expanding these initiatives. After the session, Frank met with Zextra in a small conference room. "Earth has exceeded expectations," Zextra said. "When we invited you to join the council, we expected either submission or conflict. Instead, you showed us a third path." "Humans have always been good at finding paths others missed," Frank replied. "Indeed." Zextra activated a holographic display showing the new ship design. "The Council has approved construction of our first truly collaborative vessel. Engineers from all member species will contribute their expertise. We would like it to be commanded jointly by a Vraxian and a human." Frank studied the ship. It was beautiful and powerful in a way no single species could have achieved alone. "A fitting symbol," he said. That evening, as the humans gathered for dinner, they reflected on how far they had come. "Did you see the Alani delegation today?" Kyle asked. They spoke up 3 times without hesitation. 6 months ago, they wouldn't have dared. "And the Vraxian cadets are actually listening to Alan instead of just trying to overpower each other," Sophia added. Frank looked around at his team. "When we came here, we discovered a galaxy organized by fear. Now we're helping build one organized by respect." Outside their window, the massive gas giant Prax Prime glowed orange in the darkness. Around it, thousands of ships moved in complex patterns, the lifeblood of a galactic civilization slowly transforming itself. In a training room nearby, a young Vraxian cadet practiced alongside an Alani and a human. They moved differently, thought differently, but worked together with growing understanding. The Vraxian still had his claws and strength. The Alani still had her speed and perception. The human still had his endurance and adaptability. But now, instead of these differences dividing them, they were learning to make them complementary. The galaxy's apex predators had indeed laughed when they first met humans, but now they were learning that true evolutionary success came not from dominating others, but from helping all species rise together. and that was a lesson worth crossing the stars to learn.